Yo, 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 I'm Candy B. I be knitting. And this week I wanted to talk about my spinning. We are in early August, the first week in August, or the first full week in August, rather. And we are coming off of Tour de Fleece season, wherein people very much intentionally spin while watching the bike race Tour de France. I didn't participate necessarily in it this year. It's mostly just like setting challenges for yourself, spinning every day. Or some people, their challenge is to spin every day. Some people, have set things that they want to get through. Some people do like little bingo boards. Last year I joined a team, but when I first started knitting, or spinning, I never heard of it. Then I kind of watched other people and learned about it. And I was like, what? It'd be really fun to join a team. Last year I joined a team and then kind of fell off with it. This year, the whole season kind of snuck up on me because I believe it started July 4th. And by that time I was preparing to go out of town. So I was out of town the whole first week. And so I was like, I guess I'm not doing anything with it this year. And also I feel like it might need a little bit more planning, or at least for me to enjoy myself. I probably need to put a little bit more effort into planning. I can't just decide on the first day that, hey, I'm doing Tour de Fleece, because people had like whole playing videos of what they were gonna spin. I was like, oh, maybe I should have sorted some things out, and people were like clearing off their bobbins, wrapping up knitting projects, and so it just didn't work out this year. And then it ended June or July 22nd, but apparently that's just when the men stop racing, and that's the period that Tour de Fleece looks at. But then there's a whole week where the women are still racing, and so I was like, that's still technically Tour de France. So basically this whole past week I've been like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna spin every day. I'm gonna try to clear off some of these projects, and maybe that'll be my thing that I do every year. Since I can't seem to match up with everyone else, I'll just be like, I'm gonna spin for the week that the women are cycling by themselves, or maybe I was also thinking that because Lollapalooza was also happening and streaming on Hulu, I was like, oh, maybe I should do a Spinapalooza or something. I just feel like 3 weeks in the middle of summer is too much. So okay, maybe I can make this into something else. Long story short, I've spent the last week wrapping up a lot of long coming spinning projects, and I would like to share them with you today. The first thing, we're gonna go from oldest to newest, I think is the order we're gonna go in. And I wanted to show y'all this. So I've been reading, slowly but surely, what is it called? Wow, Jillian Moreno's book. I'll put the name in the description box, and hopefully by the end of this video, I remember what, Yarnitecture, probably one of the most famous spinning books there is. And I'm just reading it on my iPad from Libby from the library. And so I read a little bit and then it gets returned to the library, then I just recheck it out again. And this is a skein. I don't think if I did show this on video, it was one of my first videos, because this is a very old spin. This is from Green Goat Fiber. She does plying pairs, and this is called Trash Heap. I have shown this before because I showed y'all after I went to the festival where I bought the actual fiber. This is called Trash Heap, and it's from her Fraggle Rock collection. So she has a plying pair where there's one color of one fiber, another color of another fiber, and you apply them together. And when I first plied this, I was feeling very self-conscious about my plying style. I felt like compared to everyone else's yarn, my yarn was overplied. And so I tried to intentionally take some of the twist out of it, and it came out very underplied, and I did not like it. And reading Jillian Moreno's book has given me the confidence to go back and reply this tighter. None of the yarn I'm going to show you has been finished yet, because I like to finish plying everything that I'm working on and wash and thwack and snap into one big batch. But this is that yarn. And I just ran it right back through my my wheel, my Asher Traditional, and just put a little bit more twist in it. And I like the way it looks much better. It's, it's not finished yet, so it is still kinky curly in some places, but I like that. And I think going back to Jillian Moreno's book, she talks about, you know, over applying, under applying. And I think it is because I usually do like a short forward, you know, worsted style draft that just lends itself very well to a bit of over applying. And the thing I like about the book, I had been very intimidated. I'm intimidated in general by spinners and by spinning, and I am trying to like up my game. And so I was kind of nervous going into the book because I was just like, oh, she's gonna tell me everything I'm doing is wrong. You suck at this. Get good, noob. And really, I like the style of the book, and the style of the book is very much complementary to how I learn. She doesn't tell you this is right, this is wrong. She gives you all of the information, and she says, okay, this is what over applying is. This is why you might want to over apply. This is what is going to happen to your yarn if you over apply. This is what over applied yarn is good for. This is balanced yarn. That is what this is good for. Underplied yarn, apparently that's more of a woolen spin. Some bulkier yarns could do with underplying, and what the applications are, what the implications are, and then looking at the information, make the decision for yourself of what you're going to do. Because a lot of times, especially social media, I'm online and I'm trying to get answers and I'm asking questions, and people are like, well, I've been spinning for 40 years and I've never done it that way. So, you know, you should do it this way. Or, you know, some people are like, well, I've always done it like this, or such and such always told me to do that, and I don't believe in always and never. And so the book has really opened up my mind with how I approach spinning. And really at the end of the day, it should be, you know, more of a personal thing, but sometimes I feel like, oh, I should be doing it like this person, so I'm more, you know, with it, you know. But that's the long and short of this. Then up next, this is something I've shown y'all recently. I had a bat I made with some silk bits and some wool, and I was playing with leaving it as a single, and then I decided to ply it because I got this silk kinu yarn. It's from the Ito yarn line. I'm trying to find a strain of it. And it's like lace weight silk yarn, and I bought this with the intention of plying it and making like some textured more art type yarns. And so I did end up plying that silk bat. For your own edification, I had made this one, and I had made more like coils and beehives with this yarn, and I steamed blocked this to finish it. And then this one, I just did a more traditional ply, but it is very much thick thin. It has like these neps of silk in it, and this still needs to get finished. I'll probably steam this one as well. But it's just a 2-ply with a big bat of fiber and some of this silk thread, and I think that came out nicely. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this. It's not very much yarn, and it is heavily textured. Probably an accent on a bag or a basket, or something like woven would be good for that. The big project I had recently on my Ashford Traditional, that's the main big wheel I own, I had some fiber I got from RH Lindsay. I got pounds of just solid colors because I was just like, oh, this will save me money because I can complement some of my hand-dyed braids with some solid colors. And turns out I hate spinning solid colors. And so now I had this plan to start like plying it with some things kind of in the style of Green Goat Fibers, doing plying pairs. And so I have magenta, and then I had, I should have brought that fiber upstairs. I have a little bit more fiber. So I had this magenta color I got a pound of from RH Lindsay, and then I had a braid of Peruvian Highland wool that I got from Knit Picks and dyed it myself with Easter egg dye, and it came out like really pastel-y. And so I was like, well, I'll apply it with this magenta. My thought being that the magenta, and you can see here, I don't have I've spun it all, so I don't have the raw fiber anymore. And I really like the idea of barber poling 2 different colored plies coming together and spinning. And I thought the, what do you call that? The magenta would go nicely with the pastel turquoisey robin's egg blues, some pinks, and this wool of the Andes. But instead it created like this really high contrast where it mostly just looks like white is plied with this magenta. And I was just like, I really don't like this. It's very kind of jarring. And so I went back to the drawing board, and I already had one bobbin of the magenta, one bobbin of the, I'm calling it Easter egg, stuff that I had dyed myself. And so I was just like, I have more fiber. What I'm going to do is what's called a parallel draft, which you can find out more about in Yarnitecture. This is going to be a Yarnitecture heavy episode, wherein instead of like blending it or carding it or combing the fiber together, I just took a handful of the Easter egg fiber, a handful of the magenta from R.H. Lindsay, and just drafted them together, laid one on top of the other. I played around with holding one more dominant than the other on some of the, on two of the bobbins. Like I would hold the magenta and then kind of lay the Easter egg on top, and then one bobbin I had the Easter egg in my main hand and then put the magenta on top. And then I plied those plies with my solids. And so I came up with, so this is magenta held with a parallel ply. And so you see it's mostly magenta, and then you get these flecks of, it kind of still looks a little bit white, but if you look closely, it's really pale, pale blues, pale, pale pinks. And then you see the difference here with this ply. And then I had a ply of that Easter egg color, and maybe you can see it a little bit better here. But you get punches of magenta mixed throughout. Some turquoisey blues and some pale, pale pinks. You can see it if you're like kind of close up with it. And this is mostly a fingering. It's kind of a light sport in some areas, and it hasn't been finished either. And so once I wash it, I might get some blooming with this wool of the Andes. It was a little bit hard because the R.H. Lindsay is dyed Corriedale and it's combed top, and the wool of the Andes is roving. And so the roving is very fluffy, very airy, woolen prep, while the magenta is much smoother, more of a worsted prep, and then I short forward them together. And so that's that. I have 2 skeins of these. I haven't done any weighing or measuring yet. I do want to get more into that, and I'll cover more of that. Just making spinning more of a priority. Right now I have one notebook that has everything I'm working on. I just write down what I'm working on, and I have, within literally the last week, actually started a notebook that just has my spinning in it, and I can calculate the wraps per inch, calculate the grist, but I'm not going to do that till after I wash it. I did write down some preliminary numbers, and then because depending on how you finish yarn, those numbers do change after you wash them, so it would be interesting to know if I had any loss. Probably should have looked at my yardage of my individual plies, because once you ply them together you lose more yardage because, you know, everything's twisting at an angle. And so that would be interesting to know, because then you can figure out how much fiber to buy to get to a certain amount of yardage at the end, because you're losing fiber through drafting. You know, little short bits are coming out, then you wash it, then you dry it, you ply it, and so there's so much opportunity there to change. You know, just because you buy a pound of yarn doesn't mean you're gonna, or a pound of fiber doesn't mean you're gonna end up with a pound of yarn. So that's this. Ideally, I would use this in a shawl, and we're quickly approaching the end of the 3rd quarter of 2025. I cannot believe it's 2025. And so I'm already planning what projects or goals I want to set for 2026. And I'm thinking hand spun shawl. Like, I've used a little bit of hand spun in the shawl, but I want it to be at least 51% hand spun. And so this is already, you know, a good amount of yarn. If I'm doing like a 4 or 5 color Stephen West shawl, this is more than enough for one of the colorways, and then planning it from there. And if you've watched more than, if this is your first time watching, hi. But if you've been here a while, these are colors that work well with what I have in my stash. So even if I don't spin more, I have commercial yarns that would go with this. But if I use these as 2 main colors and a 4-color shawl, that's gonna get me to my 50% hand spun. And then when I finished plying, I had more of this Easter egg color left over. And if we rewind, I had this trash heap plying pair, and back 2-3 years ago when I spun this originally, like I said, it comes with 2 braids in 1 pack, and I had spun it up and I ended up with, if you can see in this, there's like a kind of a greenish, brownish, grungy, trashy color, and then there's these pinks and blues. The pink and blue I had apply like a little center pull ball left after I finish plying this. And usually I will take that and ply it back on itself and make a 2-ply of whatever I have left over. Or you can chain ply it, whatever, you know, however you want to use up all of the yarn. But with that, I decided, because I had bought the whole Fraggle Rock collection, I was like, oh, maybe this can go with another set of yarn that I have in my collection. And so I actually put it in this box. And this box has, like, whenever I finish plying, you know, if I do have a yarn left over and I'm like, oh, maybe I won't, you know, I have everything in center pull balls. That's how I ply. And so when I have leftovers, I put them in here sometimes. And so I have this whole box of leftovers. I also have, like, what I call mix-ins. This is some of the first yarn I ever spun, or first fiber I ever spun. I've got little baggies of just, you know, this is where I keep my tinsel for spinning or for making bats. And so it went in here. And also I use this for when I'm starting to spin and I need a leader for my spinning wheel. This is good stuff to use. And so it's just like my little catch-all junk drawer, if you will. And so I had some of that left over. And I also had some of this left over. It has more like a pinky orange tone to it. And I was like, oh, this might be good too. And so what I did was I took that and I spun it with, or applied it with this. So this is Peruvian Highland wool from Knit Picks that I dyed, mixed with Green Goat Ranch trash heap apply of that. And so we have some deeper pinks and turquoises mixing with that robin's egg and kind of light pinks from that Easter egg dye. And I literally bought Easter egg dye on clearance and used it to dye wool just as an experiment. And I think this is probably the most successful out of anything I spun lately. And it was just leftovers that I had spun with leftovers from a couple years ago. And so that came out really nicely. Because that Peruvian Highland wool is so much fluffier, and this is like an older ply of mine, this one is more, it's not completely consistent, but it definitely has more places where it's a sport weight over a fingering. So that's that. Like I said, none of that's been washed yet. So going in order, now we're going to talk about, that was everything that was on my Ashford Traditional. Now my wheel is completely empty, because I have an electric wheel and I have drop spindles, and I like to ply on my Ashford Traditional, and so I'll be done with these soon, so I didn't want to tie up my Ashford Traditional before I finish plying some of this other stuff that I'm working on. And so I have an electric eel wheel nano from Dreaming Robots. I got it secondhand, and I have several bobbins. This is 2 of what's going to be 8 bobbins of Moreno from, what is it, Black Smoke Fibers. This is the oh my goodness, this is the raw fiber, and it's called Starburst, and it's Black Smoke Fibers. And all I had was 1 braid of this, and I'm still trying to get the hang of my electric wheel, and oranges and yellows aren't my go-to color, so I figured I could sacrifice this braid in order to learn more about my electric wheel. And yeah, so I just made a bunch of little nests and broke them up and These are my bobbins. I don't fill them all the way up because I find the more weight I add to the bobbin, the more I have to kind of like micro adjust some of the settings. And so I'm not confident that I'm getting a consistent spin if I'm having to adjust the machine. So I just spin it up to about halfway full. And I have, like I said, 8 of these bobbins. It's gonna be just enough for each of those nests. That I have 2 more nests and I have 2 more bobbins. And if you've listened in the past, this is my eel wheel nano. His name is William December Williams III. And I've really struggled with him because just in general, it's the last thing I reach for. If I'm wanting to sit down and spin, I much rather spin at my wheel, my wooden Ashford traditional wheel, or with my drop spindle. And I finally cracked the code this week. Part of the reason why is I don't like the sound of it. It's not like, I've said this before, I'm sorry if I'm belaboring the point, but I just don't like the sound of electricity. It's my own sensory thing. My family is just like, it's not loud at all, it's not bothering us, but every time I spin with it, I have to have headphones on or have to be watching something else loudly, and then I can't really talk to anyone. My solution has been to find something that I really want to watch, and it's been very helpful this past week to be like, no, I am sitting down and I'm going to finish this. The other thing that has been frustrating for me, and I think I've cracked the code on, is that one, I find the uptake to be really fiddly trying to like get the bobbin started. And because when you tie a leader around it, because this is plastic, it just spins. And so you really have to get it, either you have to physically, or I have to physically twist it myself to get the bobbin going. Or what I've had people recommend to me is to tape the leader on, and that will help it get started in the right direction. For me, I don't feel like putting tape on this is a sustainable solution, because then I'm gonna end up with gooey tape bits, and it also just kind of feels kind of janky because, you know, I'm spinning, you know, luxury, nice fibers. I just want it to be a pleasant, pretty experience. The other thing was it comes with the yarn guides. It comes with are these metal ones that are like looped around themselves. And I found it really fiddly to get my leader through. And then as I was spinning, it would sometimes get snagged here. And so I bought some 3D printed replacements, which are much smoother and easier. The only problem was, as I was spinning, these fellas would fall. Oh no, it doesn't want to fall off. It falls right off. And so I was looking for like a long-term solution for that, because some people were like, oh, these are too tight, you have to sand them down. Or I was thinking, since they're too big, I could like fill them in with like some hot glue or some clay or something. And as you can see, I found a solution to both my issues. One, these bobbins come flat packed. Excuse me 1 second. And so they have the end of the bobbin right here, or the whirl of the bobbin, and then the actual bobbin piece. These pop into each other. And I saw on a random video, don't know the person, thank you very much, whoever you are out there, they just tucked their leader right here and then popped these pieces together, and the leader was trapped in there. And so that has helped a lot. You just have to make sure that you don't have too much overhang, because then it's like in the middle and slowing down the machine. But that's made a big difference. And then as you can see, to solve my yarn guide problem, I actually use the yarn guides it came with as like a clamp to keep these guys in place. So I put my plastic guy on there, and I actually put the yarn through there, and then I use this because this fits real snugly because it's made for this machine, and I use that to keep the yarn in place. And those two things have made a big difference, but I would not have discovered those if I didn't like sit down with the machine and actually troubleshoot the problems I was having. So now this is a much better experience. I got this on here. The other reason I don't necessarily reach for this, which I also had an aha moment with recently, I was talking to my husband, Mr. Rulud, and he walks and runs as like his fitness hobby. and he's gotten into it like the past couple of years. And so as a result, he's bought a walking pad for when it's too cold or the weather is just not hospitable to walking outside. And he was saying how much he enjoys fitness as his, you know, hobby. He enjoys walking and running as his hobby, but something about being on the treadmill, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, something about being on the treadmill is just very different than walking outside. And he much rather walks outside, and he finds himself kind of bored and looking around and like feeling like time is not passing when he's inside on the treadmill. And this very much feels treadmill-y to me. Like, it's very easygoing, you know, it's electronic, so you don't have to treadle and all that stuff. You can do things so much faster, but sitting there and just short forward drawing without treadling, without standing up with my drop spindle and doing all the things with my drops, like drop spindling and treadling on the Asher traditional, it just engages my body and my senses in a much more engaging way. And with this guy, I'm just kind of sitting there watching YouTube, just like, is 30 minutes up yet? Is 20 minutes up yet? Have I done the thing yet? And so I think the solution with that is, one, I'm gonna pivot from, I have like this feeling that, oh, I have to have a project on a drop spindle, I have to have a project in my wheel, I have to have a project over here. And that approach works very well with knitting, not so much with spinning. And so I think I'm gonna make myself focus on more of one project at a time and just work through it, because being able to avoid this has not been helpful. But also I'm gonna think about the type of project I'm doing and actually make it suitable to the yarn. And so rather than doing a hand-dyed braid short forward draw on here, maybe do that on my wheel, because I feel like I'm engaging my body and it's much more exciting. And for here, I'm gonna practice my long draw. And I actually think this is a really great tool for long draw, because I can associate the machine or orient the machine anywhere around me and turn my body the way it needs to do for long draw. Because when I do that on my wheel, I'm able to do that on my wheel, but I don't think that that's the healthiest, most sustainable thing ergonomically to have. The healthiest way to sit usually is with, you know, hips square, knees right above your ankles. And with long draw, there's a twisting. I have my feet and my ankles are totally out of alignment, and this will actually help me with that and keep me more mentally engaged while I'm doing this. So I'm discovering things about myself. I'm learning. Last but certainly not least, I do have my project on my drop spindle, and I have my last plies literally on the drop spindle. They're resting on my drop spindle now. I do like to rest my bobbins in between. And these are my last two bobbins. I just have like Etsy teaching spindles. I actually have been threatening recently to learn to whittle and making my own drop spindles, because I do covet the more hand hewn, painted support spindles. But for now, I just have the most basic, which is more than enough. And I have this whole basket of center pull balls that are going to go into a sweater for my husband. Looking at all of these balls, I we'll see. It's allegedly, like I said, a pound of fiber doesn't necessarily make a pound of wool, so we will see. This is more from RH Lindsay. This is what they just call taupe. It's a bunch of mixed fiber together to get this color. I can get more of something in this family, but I can't get this exact blend of fiber again. I can also buy commercial yarn that might complement this, and I think I might have some commercial yarn in my stash that might complement this. The only issue is that Mr. Rulud, he's very much a solid guy. He's, you know, if I'm a Stephen West shawl, he's a petite knit, oversized mohair pullover. You know, he's very straightforward, plain. He wants something just very well constructed, let the yarn speak for itself kind of thing. And so I don't want to make like one of my scrappy spectaculars for him. And so once I wash and thwack, I am going to thwack this and full it out. Not full it out. Fulling is a totally different thing. I will, usually how I finish my yarn is I soak it and then just snap it a little bit, but I will thwack this where you hit it, because I think it's going to get some really nice blooming with this fiber. Fulling is when you take it and put it from cold water to hot water to cold water, and you get like a really nearly felted result with that. Usually use that for singles, but also Jillian Moreno's like, this is what you do. You do what you want to do, but this is the information to get you where you need to be. And I probably will want to finish that book before I start my next big spin. That's all of the yarn and fiber I wanted to show you. I do want to show you two quick little tips that help me, and they're free. Oh, this is the last of that magenta. I had a little tiny bit of that magenta left over, and so I'm just gonna pop this in my little scrap bin slash junk drawer. This is a mug. It's a mug. This mug was actually was free. I got this from the break room at my old job, and I make all those center pull balls, and that's how I ply. By the way, I'm gonna make a 4-ply with these. I didn't say that, and I'm actually gonna have to end up doing a one of those things where you make your own lazy Kates, because my lazy Kate only has 3 slots on it, and I'm not rewinding all of these bobbins into center pull yarn, center pull cakes. Usually if I did spin worsted, I would rewind and make sure everything's smoothing in the right direction, but I just can't be bothered. And I can't say never, because I have plied from one end in the inside of a center pull ball before, but what am I trying to say? I want to see if it does make a big difference without rewinding my plies, but I've never made a 4-ply yarn before, so I'm gonna ply them on these probably with a shoebox lazy Kate. That being said, okay, as I was saying, I usually rewind my bobbins so that I'm starting from the same end I started spinning from. I'm plying from the same end, and so I end up with a bunch of cakes. Also, I just don't have that many bobbins for my actual traditional, and so what I end up doing is I put the center pull ball inside, either inside this mug. If it's too big, I'll just sit it to the side of the mug, or I'll sit it up on my windowsill, and I plop the guy in here, and then I just feed it through the handle. And this mug is fairly weighty, and so I don't have to worry about it tipping over, and I can move the mug around to kind of set my tension. And it's worked like a dream for me. It's like a really smooth, well glazed mug. And it works really well for that. And most knitters I know, or spinners I know, have a ton of these laying around the house. And I have a lot that are like more of like my collector's mugs, and they work really well for this because I don't feel guilty that I'm not drinking out of them, but I'm like, I can use them for yarn, and you know, just sitting on the floor, they're not gonna get broken or chipped. This one's chipped because it was secondhand. The second thing I want to show you is actually something Jillian Moreno brought up in Yarnitecture when it comes to plying, and I've always been very cognizant of my twist angle and how my plies come together, because sometimes they get like, so they're more side by side. And so she suggests either using a button or a lid from a spice. And so this came off the top of, I want to say like some sort of like spice mix, because I wanted to make sure it had like the holes were big enough, because some of the spices, like if you like open up like chili powder, the holes are really tiny, so not much will come out. But if you have like one of those mixes that has a bunch of different spices in it, or the ground, the pepper, the whole pepper pieces, I can't think of what they're called, but the pepper that you grind comes in things that have big holes like this. And so I just literally popped this right off the top of a spice that I had in the spice cabinet, made sure it was clean. Sometimes plastic can have little snags on it, but this is really smooth. You don't necessarily want really fine fibers getting snagged on plastic. And the holes are much, like if I tried to spin like a bulky weight, I might be in trouble, but I don't spin bulky. These are way big enough to accommodate any of the plying that I would be doing. If you want to see, this is like my default right here. It is really fine. And so that works very well for this. And so I did use it for this, even though it was just a 2-ply. I just wanted to get comfortable using it and seeing if I like it. But I think it's going to be indispensable for a 4-ply. And then you can even set the plies in different areas if you want the twist angle. So obviously if you had them really far away, the angle would be really wide of the 2 yarns coming together, or you could make them a little bit closer. But the way they're placed, you could evenly place the plies. And I believe the video where Eve does her 4-ply, she uses some tool like this. I think you can definitely buy a tool like this, but why buy it when you can have it for free? I don't have any buttons that are this big, but if you had a button that had buttonholes, you could use that. But the idea is before you start plying, because I did start and I was like, oh, I wanted to put these through the hole. You put them all through the hole, and it not only holds them at an equidistance, it makes it easier so that your plies aren't getting all jumbled up and they're coming together in an even twist. One of the big issues when I'm plying is when I have to stop in the middle of plying, and this helps prevent the twist from traveling up into my balls, especially when I'm handling a bunch of center pull cakes. It can get really out of hand. And so I wanted to show you those 2 things. I feel like I talked really fast because I'm done already. That's everything I wanted to show y'all. Did you participate in Tour de Fleece? Did you do like me, watch everyone else have fun and then be like, oh crap, I should probably start spinning something and spinning a little bit more? How's life treating you? Do you feel like the 3rd quarter of 2025 is almost over and we're almost in I feel like I never got used to writing down 2025, and now it's about to be 2026. Let me know. You can let me know in the comments below this video. You can message me on Instagram. I'm at Rudelyt on Instagram. I'm candibknittin on gmail.com. I'm candibknittin on Blue Sky. I'm just around. Please like, comment, share this video. Do all of the things that you were required to do by YouTube law. Until the next time, peace.